Welcome back to part 5 of the 6-part series on midlife crisis energy, where we look at what goes on during a midlife crisis through the lens of astrology. And we talk about the transits. And this one, we're discussing the second Saturn opposition that you will experience in your life. As we get into this, this is usually occurring for most people around age 42, okay? But think about the last time, maybe the first time, the last time that you had one of these transits, 14 years old, okay? There are other ages that it occurs at, 14, yeah, I said that, 70, 98. So it's going to be a while before you have to go through this again. After you make it through, your second one, it'll be a while before you have to get through your third and, fourth, if you make it that far, right? And if you think back to what you're going through at age 14 or any 14-year-old, this is a tough age. It's a tough age. And I say, it could have a lot to do with this. Saturn opposing your natal Saturn placement in your birth chart. So it leaves you with this feeling of, you're dealing with life lessons, right? Saturn is karma. So you're really looking at who made this big mess? How do I clean it up? And at least you're being forced to kind of look at some mess that needs to clean up, okay? Or how to set things straight, how to set things right. There's something about karma going on here. So by age 42, either you're coming to some successful culmination of your life's work and your efforts, or you're like me, a lot of other people, where you're having to clear out old patterns of behavior, maybe habits that are challenging your career, your status. And you're having to weigh your options because you're really at a halfway point in a cycle of maturity. So the advice with this kind of transit is that you've got to reassess and refocus your life. And honestly, that's kind of what's been going on with all the other transits that I've mentioned. It's just another layer of reassess, refocus. But more specifically, this transit is about taking an honest, sober look at, do you need to course correct? Are you climbing the right mountain? Do you need to keep climbing this mountain in life? Pay attention to where Saturn is located in your chart, because that's going to tell you more specifically what areas of your life are being impacted by this. For me, my natal Saturn is in the second house. And so when this transit occurred, Saturn was in my 8th house. Not easy. I don't think, anybody appreciates Saturn in any of the houses, but from what I've heard, 8th is probably one of the hardest houses to have Saturn in, because you're dealing with issues of shared resources. It's a money house, right? And we're talking about an opposition here. This is the transit is an opposition. So whatever house is being targeted, it's the opposing house. So in my case, 2nd, 8th houses that oppose each other, these are money houses. Let me tell you, this was not easy at all. It's about, your money versus other people's money. Your self-worth is 2nd house, intimacy, 8th house. And so, pay attention to the axis that is being hit with the transit in your chart. And I've mentioned this before, where, if it's 1st and 7th houses, then this is an issue dealing with yourself and others, important others, like married partners, people with lifelong commitments, business partners. If it's 2nd and 8th house being impacted, this is personal and shared resources. As I mentioned before, that's where it was hitting me in my chart. If it's 3rd and 9th houses, and we're talking about learning versus understanding. 4th and 10th house is origin versus your destination in life. Origin meaning your family of origin, right? Your home, family, your sense of belonging. 10th house is that status, the legacy that you're leaving. And 5th and 11th houses have to do with creations and legends, your legacy as well, because it's like your wish fulfillment, your ideals is 11th house, your friends, your networks, versus 5th house is more what you personally create on your own accord. You know, your children, your projects, the fun times, the romance. And your 5th house could be like dating and romance, whereas 11th house is more of that soulmate that you have in your life, or that you're seeking. 6th and 12th houses are more about the mundane and the spiritual worlds, like daily, day-to-day habits and living, versus the hidden realms, the dream activities, the subconscious versus, you know, the conscious being 6th house, right? There might be some kind of restriction or limitation that you're dealing with in this opposition, that is triggering your natal chart in a way where it's bringing up this karma, like you're here to learn this lesson about how to deal with this particular limitation or this restriction, or it's about maturity. Saturn is about getting more mature in some respect and sobering up to reality and being practical, pragmatic, down to earth, doing what has to be done, not what you feel like or you want. It's not pie in the sky. It's not, you know, a feel-good energy. It's very sobering. For me, I was going through this opposition January of 2017 through February of 2019. Honestly, quite a brutal year. I mean, obviously, you want to look in your natal chart at what else is going on around that time. And I could say, as an Aquarian, that was a year that Aquarians and Leos were getting hit with eclipses. So that was just another layer of, oh my God, difficulty there. And it was really setting off an inner crisis in me. And when you put this in money houses as well, it's like I'm being forced with the energy to evaluate my own self-worth and really look at intimate relationships. And money was very much tied to it. Because as I mentioned in previous videos, you know, I went through a very devastating situation, loss of income, loss of home, completely out of my control, you know, made me feel very powerless and totally awakened me to the reality of who was supportive of me in this life and who's not. And turns out a lot of the relationships I had were not much more than fluff, okay? I mean, you hear this saying that in life, you really have, you're lucky if you have a handful of really close friends, good friends, true friends, okay? We call people friends quite flippantly, but seriously, who is your friend? Who could you call up at 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, I figured it out with all this midlife crisis. I mean, and I'm gonna tell you, like, it wasn't good. Okay, like it wasn't good. Very sobering. All right, so. And these money issues, the self-worth, the intimacy issues really illuminated it, and it was all triggered and set off by this Saturn opposition. So another thing is that this was especially nasty for me because it triggered my Mars and Saturn opposition in my natal chart. See, it is helpful to look at you know, not to complicate and overwhelm the newbies and the beginners, but if you're looking at layers of energy, right, you're looking at what other transits are occurring at about the same time, and also what other you know, aspects in your natal chart are being hit, right? So for this to hit my 2nd and 8th houses was setting off an opposition I already have in my 2nd and 8th houses in my natal chart, which, by the way, you know, Mars opposing Saturn is one of the most difficult aspects you can have, where, just briefly, you know, it's an energy where every time you try to assert yourself, you're getting some kind of pushback. You're getting some kind of restriction or limitation or being put in check. And I had one astrologer explain it to me. She said, it was like, you know, it's like you're under God's thumb, you know. She said it's like every time you try to do something, if you get out of line, spirit is right there saying, you know, slapping you on the hand like, nope, you can't do that. And so with me having that in my natal chart and that really getting lit up, all of this stuff being activated, and then you put it in a house, 8th house, which is very much about death, rebirth. It's very platonic, all right? I was having an existential crisis. I was, you know, really going beyond, like, what's the point of life, which I talked about in segment 2 with the Pluto squaring Pluto, natal Pluto. Yeah, I felt that, but it was going even more hardcore to a deeper level of, you know, not to get too morose or morbid, but it was like, what is the point of life? What is the point of living? Nothing matters. These relationships are flimsy. Everybody's out for themselves. I mean, I was looking at the darkest shadow aspects of humanity. You know, I was facing it down, and the utter uselessness I felt of my life, of working hard, of falling in love, of raising a family. I just felt like, my God, what is the point? It's all useless, and there's no justice in the world. And a really dark time in my life. So to have Saturn in my 8th house, it really was like the death of me at the time. It was like being buried alive. And again, don't want to scare any of you and say that this is going to be your situation. This is kind of an extreme thing, right? Because not all of you are going to have Saturn transiting your 8th house, which is one of the hardest. Not all of you, on top of that, are going to have this nasty aspect in your natal chart getting set off of Mars and Saturn opposing one another, okay? So I don't want to scare you, but I do want to say, yes, it could get this hard for some of you. And what I did during that time, just to share on a personal level, you know, I was listening to a lot of, I started listening to dark wave, goth wave, which, you know, I'm an 80s baby, 80s kid, actually. I'm a Gen Xer, so I, you know, grew up on new wave. I love new wave music from the 80s. But I started listening to like dark wave, gothic wave, and some people would not understand this, but there was a healing element to it. It was a particular band I listened to, Drab Majesty, I'll tell you. Drab Majesty, I love that band. But for some reason, the lyrics and everything, it helped me get into this deep, dark place, which is 8th house, right? And it helped me to feel through and process these dark, heavy emotions, which, you know, I say a lot on my channel that it's not about suppressing, denying, hiding these emotions. It's about feeling through and processing them. But yeah, a lot of people would not be interested in that music. It's too heavy, too dark. But for me, it was healing because I was in a heavy, dark place, and it helped me to, you know, synthesize those feelings and process them in a way that, right, there's a time and a place for it. Also during that time, I was watching a lot of Ask a Mortician. Why? He's like, we're like, you know, she talks about what happens after you die, you know, what happens to these people. Very interesting show, by the way. You should check out that channel. But I don't hardly watch it anymore, but I was, you know, doing that. And I would watch also a lot of dramatic animal rescue videos where, you know, maybe this animal was like on the brink of death or something, and they restored, you know, this is maybe more of that Pluto, squaring Pluto energy coming into play there. But definitely with this impacting my 8th house, which is very Plutonic, you know, I was wanting to see these kind of almost death, rebirth, like breathing new life into something that was dead. Again, quite gruesome. A lot of people don't want to sit and watch that. It brings up heavy feelings, but for me, I was already in a heavy place. So to see animals being rescued out of a healthy place and brought into a rebirth cycle, so to speak, it was healing for me. So during that time, I became more aware of the other side, right? Because eighth house is like the underworld, you know. Became more aware of, these death and rebirth themes, and really sobered up by the reality of intimacy issues, because eighth house is a lot about sex and intimacy, the people that you share the most private of yourself with. And so during this time, I was really looking at, taking a look at the people who said they loved me, and where are these people? They had left me for dead, like what was that all about? And really kind of exploring what is intimacy, what is love. I mean, at a deeper level beyond the superficial, in the moment, feel good feelings. I mean, the kind of love that loves you when you're sick, and when you're old, and when you're not pretty anymore, and you can't just go out and do for yourself or do for others. That kind of love that remains. Really started looking at love that transcends all these ages and stages in life, and it's not about the superficial, fading, fleeting things that we take for granted in this world. I really started thinking on those things. There was a sadness that was brought to me, because I started wising up to, well, what is really love here? Because, I thought we had intimacy, I thought we had love, but actually, no, what I need is something deeper, more transcendent. And I started realizing, actually, these people, or what I thought we had, it just not enduring. It's not enduring in a deep way. So I started studying and learning more about intimacy and intimacy problems, and recognizing, which I talked about on my channel. I've got videos on my channel about, recognizing and avoiding people who are emotionally unavailable, right? This is intimacy issues. Now, some of you might benefit from going to my blog, where I have, I'll link it below in the comments and in the description box. I have a blog post about when Saturn is transiting through different houses that can give you more insight. Specific to the eighth house, let me say that, and definitely this axis of second versus eighth houses, these are money houses. One of the devastating things that happened to me during this transit is that I had my income tax return taken from me. It was seized from me. And I've basically been single parenting with little or no child support, and they took my income tax return over student loan debt, which I had been paying down. I actually was in a program to pay it down, but so I was just like, what is I never saw it coming. Is this kind of, this maybe is a layer of Uranus, which I talked about in the last segment. Uranus, it is random stuff. You didn't see it coming, because I'm like, how is this happening? I'm in a payment program. I know I was behind, but I've been making payments on time as agreed, and why are you doing this? And they're not going to do this. They did it. They did it. And so it was quite devastating for me, because I was struggling, and as many people know, single parents often depend on those income tax returns to make it through the year. It's not party money, it's not vacation money, it's to help kind of supplement shortfalls during the months of the year when they're not getting child support, or they're not getting whatever, if something comes up unexpected. Even if they're getting child support, they use that to supplement. So to not get this income tax return and to have it taken away from me was devastating to me on a financial level. I tried to reason with them and tried to explain to them, well, I got behind in the first place because I've of my situation. And I basically said, look, I have a court order that you guys are not enforcing, and if y'all were enforcing the court order, basically people owe me money, and that's why I owe you money. And I just didn't think it was fair. And you know what? Factually, it probably wasn't. But when Saturn is in your 8th house, it's like Saturn doesn't care. Saturn's like, no, you owe money. Like Saturn doesn't care that you owe money because other people owe you money, okay? You're going to have to answer your debts when Saturn is in the 8th house, and that's exactly what was going on. And so this was quite a pain point for me, because my way of coping with my reality was by avoiding it. I was Neptuning out. I was Pisceaning out. like, well, I can't do anything, so I'm just not going to do anything. You know, like if I had bills come in, I would just be like, I can't deal with this. I'm not going to deal with this. And I would just, you know, Neptune out. But when Saturn gets into your 8th house, you can't do that anymore. You can't avoid your debt collectors. Even if you were dealing with them, they're just going to come back and be like, yeah, well, what about that? And you're going to be like, yeah, I thought we handled that. And they're like, oh, no, we want more. I mean, it's brutal. It's very brutal. It's, you know. And so the lesson here for me with 8th house, you know, yes, about debt, taxes, your spouse's money, you know, inheritances, stuff like that. So other people's money that you're intertwined with, that you've become intimate with, right? The karmic lesson here with Saturn was be careful not to depend on people who are not dependable, because you're going to have to answer to it. You know, be careful. You're going to have kids with somebody who's not going to pay for the kids, and you're on the hook. You know, this is your karmic lesson, and people don't care that you owe them money because they owe you money. They don't, these two dots don't connect in their mind. They just want their money. And that realization, that karmic lesson forced me to get on the phone and talk to some people that, you know, with all my Pisces placements, I don't want to talk to them. My feels are upset over this. Like, and I kid you not, like I made myself like a parent. Okay, you're going to get on the phone, you're going to talk to these people. And it was like, I kid you not, I'd get on the phone, they'd put me on hold, and I would just cry on the phone. Just tears coming from my eyes. And they'd get on the phone and I'd like, It's like, I don't even know that they knew I was crying the whole time, but my God, every time they put me on hold, I'd just cry a river, you know. I'm laughing about it now. It was not funny then. But the cool thing about this transit is that I realized that I cannot depend on other people. And it doesn't matter if they, you know, they did me wrong and it's not fair. Like, I got to find out a way to transcend this, right? My 2nd house has to, right? I've got to overcome this. I've got to find a way. And so I started learning about credit rebuilding, credit repair. I started really fortifying my business and creating additional streams of income and revenue. I started looking at the weak points in my business. It was a very actually financially healing time in my life, but it came through pain and really having my hand forced at it, because I could tell you, if Saturn had not gone through that house, I wouldn't have dealt with it. I would not have dealt. It forced my hand though. And I will tell you about that whole tax situation. It came out to a happy ending, okay? And I gotta tell you this, because it's not all doom and gloom, all right? There was a happy ending. There was a silver lining. After they took my money, at the end of the year, when I filed my taxes again, I was able to write all that off and get it back in my next income tax return. They lifted the lien, and they said that'll never happen again. As long as you stay in good standing, you don't have to worry about your tax. We can guarantee, we promise. And then they I had to put in all this paperwork to prove my situation. And after I gave them all my information and, paperwork, my financials, they came back to me shockingly. I never saw this coming. They came back to me and they said, you know what? We've looked at your situation and you're right, you can't afford to pay us. So we're going to put you in a special program where, we're basically suspending the interest that you have to pay on this loan, and we're going to help you pay this loan back. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know this existed. So I basically came out ahead. Though in the moment when this hit me, I kid you not, it was devastating. Devastating. Like, I don't even want to tell you. I mean, I was in bed for days crying. Like, it was the death of me. All right. But yeah, that's that was a couple years ago. Yeah, that was 2019. It was 2021 now. 2 years later, I am in a much better situation. No, I'm not wealthy. I'm not rolling in the dough, but I don't have bad credit anymore. I can get on the phone and I can talk to my debt collectors if I need to, which I don't because all that's been settled. But even if somebody were to come talk to me, I'm not going to get emotional about it anymore. It's not going to trigger me. Because I've learned about becoming financially fit, about having the intestinal fortitude, the strength, and the financial literacy to be able to deal with whatever adversity, financial adversity, is thrown my way. I'm not saying that I want to, get in the ring and duke that out again, but definitely came out stronger than what I entered in, and I hope that that's the case for you. I think that's ultimately the point of any Saturn transit, wherever it falls in your chart, that you come out stronger in that area than you entered in. And so I hope that something I've said here has helped you. And yeah, the next transit we're going to cover is on Jupiter opposing natal Jupiter. So I hope you will join me for that. And until next time, be blessed.